Job search
Oh,
and
yeah.
graduate school
Yeah,
applications.
this is career coach 101 here.
Yeah.
This is like you were in it.
So that's important
Yeah.
to know that you can use those skills, and not only use those, but a tip is that you can put that on your resume.
So having that connection to yourself and to your family and your relationships helps make you want to help other people.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Career View Mirror. I'm your host, Joelle Crawford, and today's guest is Ann Colley. Ann is a licensed marriage, couple, and family therapist and ordained clergy who specializes in assisting couples and individuals to improve the quality of their lives and relationships and heal from past pains, which constrict the forward movement of progress. Her clients learn key tools to navigate various relationships with life's challenges. And Ann works with clients around issues of communication, co-parenting or parenting, infidelity, grief, abuse, women life dynamics, career and life coaching. She specializes in human potential, whether that's in the counseling room or in the boardroom. She believes that increasing awareness, competence, or well-being will deliver bottom line outcomes. The question is, are you ready to transform your organization or life? Well, I know I am, and I know our audience is. Welcome, Ann Colley. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, May. I've been looking forward to this interview.
I
for a
know
while
we
now.
had some hiccups. You know, COVID 2020 has just been a dumpster fire, but we did it.
Yes. Yes.
We did it. So I'm going to dive in to ask you to reflect on your career view mirror, just to take a look in the past. How would you specifically describe your career? Because you've got a lot of different hats. You wear a lot of different hats. How would you describe what you do?
So if I were to take a glance back, I think that how I got here is having an open mind. I think that, if I look at how people typically raise their children, it's around go to school, get a good job, stay on that job, and I've never been of that mindset. I believe you go where you are appreciated and where you are valued. And if a company doesn't appreciate you or value you, then you move on. But you can only do that if you are prepared, right? So if you have skills, if you have, you're using your talents, you have knowledge that someone will buy. So that's how I started, right? So, and I've never been afraid, my mom raised me. I've never been afraid of anything. And so my mom has always, when she raised us, she was like, there's no such thing as can't if it's within your purview. And the only question that's a dumb question is the question not asked.
We share.
And so ask ask for what you want. The only thing that they can say is no. You haven't lost anything, but imagine what you gain if they actually say yes. And I've gotten a lot of things simply by just asking.
That's fantastic. I feel like I agree 100% with everything your mom said, and everything that you're saying is that you don't know unless you ask. And you've got a 50-50 shot, and if they say no, maybe it's not the right opportunity, but you don't stop. And again, you've got to ask those questions in order to get into that. Now, obviously, if you are a therapist and a marriage counselor and working in life coaching, what kind of certifications did you have to get in order to get level set to support your clients?
Right. So I have an MBA. So I started out in corporate America. So I have a whole life before this. I have an MBA, and I was working for a pharmaceutical company. But I always knew I had counseling gifts and skills, but I did it just in the church. You volunteer at the church, and the corporate life was no longer meaningful. I was making a lot of money. I was going a lot of places, but I didn't feel like I was helping people in the way that I felt that I should be helping them. And so one day I was just like, okay, God, what is my purpose in this world? What am I here for? What am I supposed to be doing? And so that sort of began the new journey. So I had to go back. I went and got a master's of divinity. with a focus in counseling
Mm-hmm.
and theology. And then after that, I had to go get what they call as a postgrad, because I already had a master's degree, right? That counted towards the counseling therapy, but I didn't have enough counseling
Gotcha.
courses. And so I went to a program called Counsel for Relationships, which is in Philadelphia. And I went into their postgraduate certificate program in marriage and family
Okay.
therapy. And so, but all the while, I also teach. I'm an adjunct professor of 18 years. And so, so that with the teaching and the training, and as part of my program, well, as part of most programs, you have to do all of the supervision and you have to get so many client contact hours. So there's a lot of training that goes into it. There's a lot of supervision that goes into it. And so now here I am, 8 years later, private practice.
Doubling your
Just
your work is abundant.
yes. And I stepped it up, something that I thought about, but I hadn't done because I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. But I just hired 4 people. So now I have people working for me. So I'm just excited about what is transpiring. I've worked very hard to get to this place. And so, things are
That is
going pretty good.
fantastic. I really am proud to know you. We met at a session that I spoke at about building your personal brand, and we made
Mhm.
that connection. And there's just so much goodness that you offer to so many people. And so I definitely wanted to make sure we got you on the show. Um, for for those who are exploring a career in counseling, how would you have any tips on how they can pursue the career path? We talked about the certifications, but are there any like extra little,
Mhm.
behind the scenes tips that we need to be aware of?
So the first thing that I would do is, one of the things that we need are more people of color who are therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. And so if someone is looking at this who's in high school or, just beginning their career and they've not thought about it, I would just reach out to go and scour and reach out to a person of color and have a conversation, right? Sort of what we call an
Yep.
informational interview, right? So that you can talk to them. Now, there are 4 different ways there are 4 different ways that you can become a therapist. I am particular to the MFT route, um, but you can also become a licensed, what they call a licensed professional counselor. You can also do the
Hmm.
psychology route, um, or the PsyD route. So there are a number of ways that you can get to this spot. But I would say just having conversations. So I went to a lot of high schools have, or some high schools, I should say, have
Yep.
career days. And so I've gone to a couple of those at high schools and spoken on a panel of other therapists to give, students a feel for what that looks like and how to get there. So if your school isn't providing it, ask, say, hey, can we have a career day for mental behavioral health people to come and talk
Right.
about that field? Because even coming into the field, I did not know, I learned a lot along the way, right? There are various aspects. So you can work what we call in the community behavioral health sector, which works with the population who are socioeconomically depressed, so people who are on
Hmm.
Medicaid and Medicare. So that's community behavioral health. You can do
Hmm.
private practice, right? So for a long time, I did community behavioral health. I started my private practice. I did them both. And now I'm just full
Hmm.
private practice. Or you can go work for an institution, right? You could go work for a residence, or you could go work for an organization that provides therapy, such as GPHA. So GPHA is a federally qualified health center but they have a behavioral health section of their practice. So they do medical, they do dental, but they also do mental behavioral health. So there are a variety of ways. You could go work for a hospital, CHOP, right? CHOP has therapists. So there are a variety of different ways that you can enter into it. I would just say ask. I would just say, begin to have those conversations with people. But I also think it's a calling. I don't think that everybody can be a therapist. It has to be something that, because therapy, people think, oh, you just talk to people. It's a little bit more than that.
It's a lot more than that.
You know. So yeah, so I would just start with that, asking
I
questions.
think that's great, and you make a really good point. And when I talk with clients, and I know that you do career and life coaching as well, when we're talking to clients, you've got to ask and have those informational interviews. And now that we're remote and we're kind of in a more remote situation, having those informational interviews can be done virtually. And it's important to ask those questions about path, like what I'm doing right now, and really getting an idea of what the ins and the outs are. And there are going to be challenges. It's not just asking questions. There's some deep work that you're doing in therapy. My mom was a therapist for like over 40 years. So,
Oh, okay. Excellent.
So what's one myth about working in your field that you wish you could just eliminate from everyone's minds?
I think that therapy is for crazy people.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
First of all, we don't use that term in therapy lists because there aren't any crazy people. There are human beings who have traumas and tragedies and who have experienced events that cause them to need a safe space to be able to process. But that's one section. But there are people who are just trying to navigate the transitions of life, right? There's no mental health issue. There's no, but life circumstances may be overwhelming or stressful. For instance, a lot of therapists are seeing more clients now because so often we can run away from our issues, right? So prior to the pandemic, you could go to clubs, you could party, you could, travel, you could hang out with friends, you could do a lot of things to avoid or not acknowledge what was happening either with your spouse or in your household or with your children, or even with yourself, right? And so now that we are stay in place, and a lot of those external distractions are taken away. People have to sit with themselves. So it's very hard for people to sit with themselves. And so now people are saying, you know what, I should have been in therapy a long time ago. And so now they're coming. They're coming to deal with grief. They're coming to deal with loss. They're coming to deal with the stresses of being at home and having to manage the children and the household and the spouse, or they're coming to deal with loneliness because single people now, right, are stay at home. A lot of people are at home by themselves. Right? Isolated and withdrawn. And so there are a number of reasons that people come. And so you did ask me about the coaching aspect. Because I'm a therapist, all of the qualifications to be a coach, I already have. So my license on some level allows me to coach. And I would say that the difference is between a coach who goes to get a coaching certificate and myself is that I have the psychological piece in a way that a coach may not have, right? Now coaching is not
it is
therapy.
definitely not. It is definitely
right. Just like therapy is not coaching, although there's some aspects that overlap, right? If you do a Gantt chart, there are some pieces that fit, but they're different but similar. Like in therapy, I don't tell people necessarily what to do. I ask questions to help them lead. I do give homework. But in coaching, it's very directive, right? It's very
Yes.
prescriptive in a way. And so there lies some of the difference between if I had a life coach a life client or a career client versus me
Right.
doing therapy.
Right. There's like these targeted goals that I feel like when I'm coaching that I'm dealing with, but if I'm finding that I'm getting more resistance, and it's not that I expect my clients to do what I say, but if I'm finding that we're hitting a wall and that person is really running into the same conflict, it seems like there's a deeper issue. I will refer them to a mental health professional. And then there's no shame,
Right.
like you said, the myth bust is that there's no
Mhm.
shame in getting assist. Everyone should have a therapist, quite frankly. Um, everybody.
Everyone.
It's not, there is this weird stigma that, that to go to a therapist means that you're weak, but I feel like that's an act of strength. When coming from,
Absolutely.
both of us came from the corporate world, and a lot of my audience are, either in that corporate setting or looking to explore
Mhm.
moving into that corporate setting. That's definitely an area where you need therapy, with all of the different things that are going on. But to your point, as
Yes.
we've shifted and as our environment has changed, we do need help. All of us need to ask for help, and that goes back to that first um, question that you responded to about, not being afraid to ask for help, so it's
Mhm. Mhm.
important. So I appreciate your responses on these questions. Have you experienced, we talked about, you talked about how we need more therapists and mental health professionals of color. Have you experienced any challenges along the way being a woman of color in your field?
Um, I'm not going to say that I experienced challenges, particularly just because I'm a woman of color. Um, I think that in some ways it has helped. I think because most institutions that do training are very
Hmm.
Eurocentric, right? Very European white lens perception. And so sometimes some of the differences that ethnicities um, and cultures are lost
Uh-huh.
in the trainings. And so I've had opportunity to speak to those differences. Right. So, if anything, me being a woman of color has allowed me to give voice to the voiceless in a way that our systems, right, as you and I know, sometimes because there's structural bias and racism that exists in our
Mhm.
country, whether it's intentional
Right.
or unintentional. And so I think that it has helped more than it has hurt um, than anything. I think where under some circumstances there has been an issue, it has been less with me being a woman of color and versus me not being a
Uh-huh.
doctor, right? So because we give these, if a person has doctor
Yep.
behind their name, somehow they know more. And I have found that just because you have doctor doesn't
I agree
necessarily
with you
mean.
there.
uh,
I definitely agree with you there. And I think it's great that you said that you see it as a help because again, one of the premises of this show is that if you can see it, you can be it. And I feel like we need to see more people that look like us to know that we can have access to these types of careers, and that we can help restructure some of these norms or beliefs or limiting beliefs about our culture or people of color so that we can kind of really
right.
dis, I hate using that word disrupt, but really shake things up in this community and
Mhm.
really open eyes for others. about some of the
Mhm.
biases that can be put out there. Indeed. So,
Absolutely.
to my viewers and listeners who are out there, Anne is calling in from the US Virgin Islands at this very moment. And if you're watching, you can see the palm trees reflected in the background of her window. So I was going to ask how she's filling her energetic cup, but she has decided to take a month off and fill your cup. Can you just tell me a little bit of what pushed you to doing that? Like, can you help our audience understand what drove you out to the US Virgin Islands right now to fill your energetic cup?
So again, my practice is doing very well, seeing lots of clients, and so it became clear to me that I was becoming exhausted, and I am a huge proponent of self-care. Like from even before I was a therapist, I believe in taking care of yourself because you cannot be the best of who you are in no matter what position, whether it's spouse or partner or parent or employee or business owner. You can't be your best if you're not feeding yourself, if you're not renewing yourself. And so I'm pretty adamant about going away at least once or twice a year. And so and this year has been 2020 has just been a lot for
Yes.
all of us. And so, and I don't like cold, like zero, like if I never see a snowflake, if I never see weather below 60, I would be more than
Mhm.
okay with that. And it started to get colder in
Yes.
Philly early. I was like, what is going on? I haven't seen this in a while. But a couple months early, I was talking to a friend of mine who was saying that they were going to go to an island for a break, and I was like, hmm, that's a good idea.
That's brilliant.
I was like, I mean, because stay in place is
Right.
stay in place, right? So I'm not around anybody. I'm staying. I rented an Airbnb. The beach literally is a 50-yard walk. I get up in the morning, I go sit out, and it has been very renewing.
Nice.
Um, and so, yeah, that's why I decided because I don't like cold and I needed a place to really rejuvenate. It's 80s
Uh,
every day.
man, I am just happy and proud of you. And I believe that self-care is something very important. And it's, if I, you've got to practice what you teach, right? And preach. And it's been a
Absolutely.
challenge, but I definitely am learning, and I could probably take a lot of pages from your book of self-care and making it something that's a lifestyle change
Yes.
versus kind of this whimsy. It's not like bubble baths and bonbons, but I really want to make it a routine, just like fitness or that's self-care, just those types of things.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I will be looking to you for more of these self-care
Yeah.
tips. One,
It's funny. I
Mhm,
just want to make another comment about that. Came across four women who were
mhm,
down here together, and they shared that they are from the States,
mhm.
from the mainland. They've been here working from here. They are splitting the cost of an
Okay,
Airbnb and they are working from the islands because again, because of the pandemic, as long as you have internet, you can
that's the
work from
truth.
anywhere. And so maybe people consider getting 3 or 4 friends together and renting out an Airbnb and work from because again, you can work from anywhere if you're doing it
Right.
virtually.
And you're creating your own, bubble, your pandemic bubble. Why not
Exactly.
work with your friends? And
Exactly.
that sounds like a great shared workspace. Well, sometimes I think I wouldn't get any work done with some of my friends. But that's a great suggestion, of
Mhm.
creating your own little pandemic bubble and traveling, still getting that escape. But then, have Wi-Fi, will travel, and you can still get your work done
Absolutely.
in a beautiful setting. So
Absolutely.
yes, I love those tips. I love those tips. One last question, so that you can get back on the beach, is a question I like to ask all of my guests. And if you could share one or two career or leadership tips with the past you a few years ago, the young Anne, what would they be?
The younger me. Do it sooner. Um, I probably should have hired people 4 years ago. But I kept talking about, what that was going to be like, and did I really want to do it? And I'm doing pretty good, and I'm doing pretty good. So I would say, if the thought comes to you, then go with the thought, right? Don't second guess yourself. Just move on it. I would say, also, again, going back to what I said at the beginning, is, you know, the only thing about fear is fear itself, right? So we have an acronym that fear is false experiences
Right.
appearing real. And so usually what happens is that if you push through the fear, the thing that you thought was so going to be so horrific or um, difficult, was you made it more than what it
Right.
really was when you get to the other side. And so lean in and push through the fear, do it in spite of, do it despite fear. Um, and then I think one thing that I've always done, and that is be a blessing. So another one of my mottos is that to whom much is given, much is expected. And so I think that when you go through life, and I should say this has
Mhm.
worked for me, is that when you go through life with open hands and to give, things come back as
Mm.
well. And so I know a lot of people, and I usually use my contacts for others. Gotten many people jobs, contacts, so that when I do finally ask for something myself, people are gracious because I have been a blessing. And I don't do it to get those things because it's very few things that I ask people for. I mean, I really am blessed to be able to do a lot of things on my own. Um, but again, be a blessing to people, right? Don't be afraid to share. That you know what, that's the piece. What I have found in our community is that because of the false notion that the pie is small, right? There is this fear that if I share what I know, if I give what I know, that somehow I'm going to miss out. But let me be clear with you. The pie is large and
Right.
infinite, right? But people of color, right, because of the racism and the systemic system that we live in, wants us to believe that the pie is
Scarcity.
small.
That's
It is not.
scarcity mentality. It is not small. There is enough to
Absolutely.
go around.
Right. There is plenty. There is plenty to go around. And so you just have to go out there and you just have to make it
Oh,
happen. Um,
thank you so
so
much for these nuggets. Do it, sooner. Be a blessing to others. Do it despite the fear, and don't be afraid to share. Wonderful nuggets of information. Thank you, Ann Colley, for being here on your wonderful break as you are basking in 80
thank you for having
degrees
me.
sun, everyone. She's sending us virtual sunshine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you,
and
Joelle.
thanks all for watching and listening. Career View Mirror. We will see you next time. Take care and be well.